The following preview has been rated Good Bad by the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. Please check out the full episode when it releases on Wednesday. This Valentine's Day, get ready for your heart to come out of your chest as the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast dive deeper than the coal mines of Valentine's Bluffs to review the cult classic, My Bloody Valentine. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And yeah, we did horror again this year.
We did.
A little bit of a deviation from what we say of an anti-romance movie, because this one does have a good chunk of romance to it.
It has a whole love triangle, but I do think this one is fun because this leans into the horror-like genre of holiday-themed things. Mm-hmm. And honestly, there's not a ton of horror specifically around the holiday of Valentine's Day. There's a ton about the whole anti-love or misunderstood love or stalkers. Mm-hmm. That whole genre is a thing, right? But specifically the Valentine's Day holiday, not as well taken over. We see a lot of Christmas. We even see a lot of St. Patrick's Day for some reason.
Oh, because Leprechaun.
Leprechaun honestly cornered the market there. But they made a lot of them. So you can watch a lot.
Yeah.
The Valentine's Day, and honestly, I'm very impressed with this movie. It did the Valentine's Day horror thing in a very well thought out, story.
Well, and it also took the slasher tropes and knew how to work with them and actually manipulate people's expectancies of what was going to happen.
Yeah, no, it really... It wasn't changing anything. It wasn't redefining the wheel by any means, but it did a really nice job of writing all of the bits together, leaving it kind of open-ended where it needed to be, and also just having some really cool gore effects.
Yeah, unfortunately a good chunk of it got cut, but...
Yeah, we did get some of it back. If you buy the newer version of the DVD, 3 whole minutes get added back on. You can tell which 3 minutes they are because they're the grainy bits. Mm-hmm. But I know the 9 minutes got cut, and I know I bitch in the episode about how some of the story I feel gets lost, or some of the character development isn't quite coming through as far as what we now know the director wanted. I still have a great time with this though, even without knowing what's happening half the time.
No, and even with it not being really directed or because even the kills they don't feel holiday themed. It's just a slasher movie that's happening around Valentine's Day.
And okay, and also we've watched, especially the Christmas ones, we have seen a lot of the holiday horror films because, let's be real, if my Amazon Prime says, hey, do you want to watch Krampus the Third, I'm going to say yes.
Silent Night, Deadly Night, which I forgot to bring up in the episode that a lot of people compared that to My Bloody Valentine, even because they do have very similar stories.
They do.
Just slightly told differently. And I think some of the execution of Silent Night, Deadly Night is quite better.
I would agree, but I also think that even though I know it wasn't necessarily done on purpose because this film was essentially conceived and created in the course of just a year. It was a very quick go around. The fact that this is in the 80s and this town seems to be stuck in the late 60s as far as Valentine's Day look ends up working really well because everything looks very handmade. And if you think about it really hard, it does imply that the killer is out here handcrafting Valentine's Day things.
Yeah.
Which I love that concept.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing about this movie is that while serious at times, its execution is fun and interesting.
And the gore, the over-the-top gore scenes we do get are always at a point in time where if you find the gore thing not necessarily scary and more of just fascinating or even funny, they're timed in a kind of a humorous way. We get someone who is cooked in a dryer. We get some hawk dog death. We get a guy who doesn't realize that his own trap has backfired and been replaced with a killer. There is comedy in this, even though it's not written for a comedy or a dark humor.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what drives why it's a cult classic is because it doesn't do the same stuff that every other horror film did of the time, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Prom Night.
And even though it has some of those elements, I also really appreciate that we went ahead and had a slightly older, character set. None of these are teenagers. None of these are supposed to be quote unquote kids.
Scream queens.
No, they're young, they're dumb, but they're not, there's no youths.
Yeah. They're kind of youths, but not
They're youths by the
youths.
state of the rest of the town being old fuddy-duddies. But,
Yeah.
like, they all have real jobs. They work in the mines or wherever the women work. Or used to work. And, like, they all have, like, they're just young, they're dumb, and they're stuck in a small town, but they're not teenagers. There's not, like, that excuse. There's not that play on, like, innocence and humanity. I really appreciate that. I feel like it picks the pace up a little bit.
Yeah, again, as the intention was, it was to be a working class horror film.
And I really like that idea of the genre. I just don't know how you would, like, transfer that onto other working jobs. Because a huge part of this is that you don't know who the killer is.
Yeah.
And boy, a mask and a big old suit make that a lot easier.
Yeah, I'd have to do some digging. I'm sure I could find some ones for you.
I'm sure there's, like, a fireman one out there that's like, oh, we don't know who the... Or it's like, you know, a ghost fireman killer or some bullshit like that. Because, like, they have the full suit. They got the hat. They got the little mask.
Yeah.
You could be fooled who that is.
Yeah,
But, like, the desk job, you know, you're not fooled. You know who it is. You can see him from across the office.
Yeah, it's not the creepy guy. It's the guy who is too good at his job.
Yeah. Like, that one wouldn't hit the same.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, there's... I don't know. There is something special about this movie that I don't know if it's going to be an annual rewatch, but it's definitely going to be one that I come back to. Definitely over the remake.
Oh, for sure. And I also think that, like, I have a group of friends who, like, we go back and forth between, like, silly shark movie horror and also, like, slasher horror. And I know this one has flown under some of their radars because they always watch newer stuff. And this one, while it is in the 80s and set in the 80s, it doesn't feel overly 80s, and I think it's going to be a big hit with them next movie night.
Yeah, that does make sense. It has a little bit of timelessness to it because everyone knows small town Americana. They might dress a little bit differently, but they don't dress that differently.
Yeah, there's not, like, you know, no one's hanging off of a jukebox, you know?
No.
Like, it feels very, like, timeless as far as a horror movie can go.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird previews.
Check out the full episode.
Peace.